Welcome back to another deep dive on The Explainer. When we think about firefighting, we usually just picture massive hoses, roaring flames, and brute force. But behind the scenes, there's this entire hidden world of precise mechanics, applied physics, and incredibly rigorous training. So today, we're going to break down the anatomy of a really high-stakes firefighting tactic known as hydraulic ventilation. To understand just how intense the training for this actually is, consider this number: 4 minutes and 40 seconds. That is precisely the amount of time a firefighting candidate is given by a state examiner to flawlessly execute this crucial multi-step maneuver during their practical exam. The stakes are immediate. The clock is ticking, and literally every single second and every single spoken word counts. So how do they actually pull it off under that kind of pressure? Well, let's reverse engineer this whole procedure. We're going to cover what hydraulic ventilation actually is, the pre-operation safety checks, executing the procedure step by step, achieving the perfect fog pattern, and finally, monitoring and making adjustments on the fly. All right, let's dive right into part one. What is hydraulic ventilation? Basically, it's the science of moving air with water. Modern firefighting isn't just about throwing water at a problem. It is about expertly manipulating the physical environment. And the secret behind this specific tactic is actually a brilliant physics hack. Hydraulic ventilation uses the movement of water and air created by a fog nozzle to draw smoke, heat, and toxic gases right out of a structure. As water exits the nozzle in a wide pattern, it creates a Venturi-like effect. Put simply, the rushing water basically acts like a giant vacuum. It grabs, or in technical terms, entrains the surrounding contaminated air in the room, pulls it toward a window or a door, and forcefully exhausts it outside. Now, you might be wondering, why not just bring in massive external fans? Well, because this method doesn't require dragging heavy, extra equipment into a hazardous zone. It uses an existing attack line that the firefighters already have right there in their hands. It rapidly removes smoke and residual heat, vastly improves interior visibility, and makes the structure way safer for the crews doing the final overhaul and cleanup. It is just incredibly efficient. Moving on to part two, pre-operation safety checks, because you definitely don't just open a nozzle without a plan. In the state exam, skipping any of these safety steps means instant point deductions, no warning. The candidate can't just think about safety in their head. They must loudly and systematically verbalize these conditions to the examiner. They've got to declare they're in full personal protective equipment. They must state they'll go on air using their SCBA gear if it's an IDLH environment. That stands for immediately dangerous to life and health. They have to confirm they've notified both interior and exterior crews so nobody gets caught off guard by a sudden shift in airflow. They also have to make sure utilities are shut down, secure a secondary means of egress just in case things go south, and, whenever possible, work from the windward side of the structure to minimize their own exposure to heat and toxic gases. Okay, section 3, executing the procedure. This is the 7-step masterclass. Once safety is totally locked in, the clock is really ticking. This setup phase is all about preparation. Step 1, the candidate must confirm the order with the officer in charge. You absolutely cannot just start changing the airflow of a burning building without command knowing about it. Step 2, select the right opening. Usually that's a window in the fire area that provides the most direct path out. Step 3, remove any obstructions. The candidate must physically and vocally clear the opening of curtains, blinds, window screens, furniture, the whole shebang. If you don't secure a completely clear path, you're going to restrict the airflow and ruin that vacuum effect we talked about. And to give you a real sense of the pressure demanded in this exam, the candidate is expected to speak with the authoritative tone of an actual active fireground. They will literally call out Engine 1 to command, confirming authorization to begin hydraulic ventilation in the fire area. It's all about proving you have the communication chops to match your tactical skills. Which brings us to section 4, the perfect fog pattern. It's really the geometry of ventilation. Now we reach the physical core of the maneuver. This is where intense spatial awareness comes into play, so you can properly weaponize the Venturi effect. Step 4, set the nozzle to a wide 60-degree fog pattern. Step 5, slowly back away from the window until the outer edge of the water cone nearly touches the edges of the opening. Step 6, ensure 85 to 90% coverage of that opening. And finally, step 7, continue flowing water to effect ventilation. The alignment of distance and angle here must be absolutely perfect to create that necessary vacuum. Now, you might be asking, why exactly a 60-degree angle? Well, through extensive testing, firefighters know that this specific wideness creates the absolute greatest air movement. It perfectly balances the spread of the water droplets to entrain the maximum amount of air without just aimlessly wasting water splashing against the walls. It is the perfect sweet spot. And this rule brilliantly illustrates another super strict geometric requirement. Remember how I said 85% of the window needs to be covered by the fog stream? Well, that means there is a deliberate 15% gap left totally unobstructed at the top of the window. Why? Because heat rises naturally. Smoke and superheated gases collect at the highest point of the ceiling. If you block the entire window with water, the smoke hits a solid wall of moisture and just bounces right back into the room. But by leaving that crucial 10 to 15% gap at the top, you create a dedicated exhaust lane for the natural flow of rising heat and contaminants to escape efficiently. It's so smart. Finally, Section 5, Monitoring and Adjustments, Adapting on the Fly. A firefighter's job is definitely not done just because the water is flowing. This tactic requires constant, active evaluation. If the candidate notices smoke movement slowing down, they might need to make some micro-adjustments, like increasing or decreasing the fog angle. If water runoff is becoming a problem inside the room, they might need to step a little closer. If structural conditions look unstable, they've got to step farther back. And if the fire conditions change completely, they might need to shut down and select an entirely different opening. They are constantly reading the room. At the end of that 4 minutes and 40 seconds, the state exam requires a complete verbal summary from the candidate, and it all boils down to this core takeaway. Continuously monitor conditions, maintain communication, and ensure firefighters' safety. Successful execution of hydraulic ventilation is the ultimate perfect marriage of applied science and uncompromising safety. It completely changes how you look at the job, doesn't it? So the next time you see a fire engine rushing down the street, ask yourself, what other hidden laws of physics are those crews using right now to save lives? Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the hidden mechanics of emergency response. Keep asking questions, keep learning, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.